All right, folks. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever, whenever you're listening to this. Welcome back in the red. I'm here with my friend Tony Seiler, and we have a really exciting show for you today. We're talking to Katerina Nash and recapping a couple training races I got into over the last couple weeks, and we are just a couple of days away from the UCI season opener in North America, Go Cross in Roanoke. So a lot of good things to look forward to. Tony, how's everything?
Good, man. Good. I'm excited for the racing to start here for sure and hear about some of the racing you've already done. I was bummed to miss the Katerina interview, but I have listened to it and it was really cool. So I'm excited to talk to you about that one as well.
Mm-hmm. For those of you who haven't been able to pick up on this, or this is your first time listening, Tony does a lot of the behind the scenes work with the editing and making me sound good as best that he can. So Tony, really appreciate your work in editing the shows, making it sound good and professional. And yeah, that was a really fun time talking to Katerina.
Definitely. We should start maybe with the racing before we talk about her, and then let's jump into that and maybe jump into kind of the show a little bit as a whole. We might have some new listeners here as we kind of start the new season. So maybe we want to start there first. So we kind of started this last, I think, November. Were you in Europe when we originally started the conversation, or were you on your way?
It was in Europe, and we have started the show. We committed to 10 episodes. You and I just said, okay, we're going to do 10 episodes. We're competing in the middle of a pandemic. We're in Europe. There's not a lot of Americans over there. And we want to be able to give an inside look into what our season was like. Recapping all the races every single week. And there were races or weeks that, especially during the curse period in late December, where I would race 3 or 4 times a week. And somehow we'd find the time to do a show or a podcast. And it was fun. It was good for me to be able to connect with people and share my story, my experiences over through the season. We did the 10 weeks. We ended our season at the World Championships, and we were able to pick the show up through the off season, through the spring and summer, doing a few shows, brought on some really cool guests. And now that things are rebounding here in North America and the season is back upon us, we're really starting to crank out the shows again. So
yeah, I kind of wanted to bring that up too, just kind of give people that evolution a little bit. And certainly if you haven't listened to the old ones, go back and check them out. It was really fun to be able to talk to Curtis every single week as he was racing in Belgium and all the stuff that was going on there. But I also kind of wanted to just bring people into sort of where we're going with it. So I think we've learned through this process that the show's really about following Curtis and his journey through his racing for sure. And then he's picking people and interviewing people that inspire him each week to keep that going, people he can learn from. If you've listened to the show before, he's really thoughtful on that end of things. So going through and going, okay, I want to learn from this person, or this person inspires me in a certain way. So that's sort of what people can expect as we go forward. We're going to talk about the racing, and we're also going to talk to people who, for whatever the reason, Curtis is like, I want to learn from something from this person.
I'm always trying to learn from everyone around me. That's life. But yeah, I mean, we're not journalists. We're not media. We're not looking to write stories on people, or this is fun for me. A big part of why I wanted to get into podcasting too is because it's the public speaking growing up, that was kind of a weakness of mine. And I have this habit of training weaknesses as an athlete, but also that's something you should be doing in life. So getting used to reaching out to people, having these conversations, having really in-depth, just understanding their stories. And again, taking away, like, what about someone inspires me? What can I learn from this person? And that was part of why I really enjoyed talking to Katerina in this conversation. She has a wealth of knowledge. She's been around the sport for not just cyclocross. You'll find that she's been in several sports at a very high level. But she's done a lot for the cyclocross community domestically and internationally, with representing the Athletes Commission at the UCI and just a whole host of things. We won't give away too much in this intro here.
Yeah. Let's talk a little about the racing first, and then we'll bring people into that conversation. So you've raced twice now, officially, like official sanctioned cross races for the season. No UCI events yet, but still legitimate races and some racing experience in your legs. So last one was like in your backyard, right? I mean, didn't you like walk out of your back door and like the cross course was just there?
2 blocks down the road, but yeah, close
Oh
enough.
man, what a commute. That's terrible.
Yeah, I know. And it was almost too comfortable. I felt like finally this must be what the Europeans feel like. They sleep in their own bed before the race, after the race. It's just down the road. That was the dream. But yeah, this is the time of year where a lot of the foundation work is done for the cyclocross season. All of the endurance, the depth of a lot of the running, the strength and conditioning, we're not trying to cram anything in now. A lot of the hard work is done. So now it's just kind of sharpening the sword. And we're finding that with the year of COVID, the UCI decided to reset all of the points, and everyone really has one weekend of racing to get points to get in their start position for the first C1 of the season in Rochester. I competed in the World Championship, so this doesn't affect me as much as it may affect most of the other athletes in North America. But there is an emphasis put on the first UCI race of the season. So everyone's going to be on good form. And it's kind of the race before the race. You want to make sure the equipment's good, your form is good, technique, handling, the numbers are where they should be. So it's going through the motions and making sure I'm as prepared as I can be for them.
So as people are listening to this is going to come out on Thursday. That's going to be our new schedule. We're going to try to release podcasts on Thursday so that you get to hear it just before the race weekend. So that'll be the just before the first UCI event. Before we talk about what to expect there, you won last weekend at Beverly. What did you feel there? How did you feel kind of being out there again? What are some of the things anything that surprised you? Anything you felt really good about?
I love paying attention to all like the small details in sport, paying attention to the equipment, the tire pressure, the gearing, the lines, the preparation, the warm up, all of these things. But the biggest takeaway for me for Beverly specifically was the community aspect of it. The promoter of the Beverly Grand Prix was the same promoter as Grand Prix of Gloucester. Great race in New England. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen anymore. But they brought a one-day event to my new hometown, Beverly, Massachusetts. And it was such a cool race because it was on a park right on the water, right on the beach. There are sections of the course that went onto the beach. And it had this feeling of like an old school classic New England cyclocross race. And I was meeting people constantly who have never been to a bike race before. It wasn't just the racers that were showing up to the event. And it was very clear that the promoter of this event wasn't just catering to people already in the cycling community. They were looking to bring in as many people as they could from the North Shore, Massachusetts area. How do they include local businesses into this event? It was a community event. And that was really cool too. The race went literally in front of people's front steps, and they're outside on their porch cheering along. And it was a really cool feel. So for me, yeah, testing the equipment, testing my body, making sure I'm on good form, and going through the motions of a race day routine again. I don't want to be showing up to the first UCI race of the season and not gone through those motions already. But it was a way for me to connect with my local community in a new way. So that was really cool.
It's got to be cool being at the old school New England race. One, because you really grew up in New England racing, even though you are a New York kid, and we're not going to relinquish that anytime soon. But you did grow up in New England racing for sure. So it had to be cool to be back there, especially after a whole year of not having U.S. racing at all, to kind of get back to that feel. Was it satisfying? Like, what did that come out for you?
It was just special. Old legend Jeremy Powers, not an old legend. He's been around.
Yeah, old. Yeah, no, he's an old legend.
Yeah, by my standards. I remember being a young junior looking up to Jeremy and thinking, I want to be doing what he's doing. And then I remember being a young punk under 23, giving him elbows in the race, and he'd still find a way to beat me pretty handily. But I was always trying to learn from him through the years, and he's retired and moving on to new roles in the sport. And he was able to take the start line, which is pretty cool. He actually lined up right next to me, and we shared a couple laughs. I was like, hey, we've been here before, right?
Yeah. Legends never get old, Jeremy. Don't worry about it, man. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
we,
But I guess, and then to that point, somebody who's gonna be calling you the same thing maybe pretty soon. Congrats to a local kid, Miles Mattern, man. He's a Cannondale racer. He was sixth. I think he's maybe 15 right now, maybe 16 race age. So someday he's gonna be telling you, old legend Curtis White, right? So you'll come back around, buddy.
Don't make me feel old, Tony. Come on. I'm still, and this goes right when I was coaching Jeff Proctor's Vermont cross camp. All of the young athletes were calling me Mr. White, and I was like, "Come on, guys! I'm still 25. I'm 26 at the end of this month. It's too early for this."
Yeah, not comes fast, man. It comes fast. So
Yeah.
tell us about this weekend, first UCI race. How do you feel about that? Like, are you nervous? Are you excited? What do you expect? Do we know what the start list looks like yet?
I think it's going to be a pretty full field there. I'm obviously paying more attention to the men's field because those are the guys I'm racing against. I'm always a fan of the sport, and I love seeing who's going to show up in both fields. But I mean, it's with the points resetting, and I believe the UCI rule is that they're going to use 2019 rankings for the start of this up to this weekend. And then after this weekend of racing, everyone starts off with a hard 0. So if you didn't compete in the world championships this past year, you're starting off with 0 points. And the only chance for you to gain points using your start grid position from the end of 2019. So you're able to hold your ranking from the end of the 2019 season on the start grid for the first couple weekends of the season this year. But when Rochester comes around and you weren't able to get any points at Roanoke, you're going to be a random draw, and it's up to the random draw where you're going to be starting. So there's a lot of emphasis on where it's going to be a lot of tension, I think, in that race. I saw Stephen Hyde, Kerry Warner, Lance Haydette, a lot of Mike Vandeham. It's going to be a full North American field there.
That's cool. I like that extra stress on it. Is there any way people can watch it? Or do we know if it's going to be televised in any capacity? I know it's not like a GCN one, but
to be honest, I don't know. Their Go Cross has been very active on their social media, so I'm sure if you go to their Go Cross Instagram page or Twitter or wherever you can find them on social media, you'll be able to find some sort of coverage of the race, whether it's Instagram stories or tweets, or I don't think it's going to be quite at the level of the US Cyclocross Series. So the first televised race, I believe, will be Rochester. But I think that there's going to be a lot of exciting things going on at Roanoke. And I think folks like Bill Scheiken with CX Hairs, there's going to be a lot of media attention around Roanoke and cool coverage after the weekend. Hopefully.
Should be some good coverage, yeah, for us to follow a little bit as we get prepared to either be at Rochester, which I'm excited for because that's in my hometown area, or to watch that on GCN if you're not real close for that. And then, of course, Roanoke is also, we talk about hometowns. It's also the hometown of your 2019 nemesis, Kerry Warner. So any added motivation in there to go in and beat him in his hometown?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, we can't let Kerry have too big of a head, right?
That's what I like to hear. I always got to push you a little bit on those because you don't really like.
I know. Yeah, Tony, you're an antagonist. I know. I got your number.
I know. I love it though. I love it. All right. So let's move into Katerina here. I love the interview. I loved the perspective of her representing athletes. One thing you and I were talking about a little bit before the show that comes out really strong in the interview, I thought, is the idea that a lot of people of, I guess, my generation, are you a millennial or are you a Gen Z?
Definitely not a Gen Z.
Not a Gen Z. You're like a young millennial. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm considered a geriatric millennial. Isn't that horrible?
What year were you born?
1982.
Is that technically still millennial? I think it is.
I've always argued it shouldn't be. Like, I always feel like more of a Gen Xer, but I believe it's like 1980 is the cutoff now. It used to be 85. When they first started calling people millennials, it was 85. So I was like, okay, I'm a Gen Xer. Now they moved it. And I very reluctantly take that title. I would prefer to be in that Gen X category. But I guess technically I'm
the millennials aren't that bad.
Millennial. Yeah. I don't know, man. I don't know. But I always think that millennials are always guilty of sort of getting on Twitter and complaining about everything and then not doing anything about it. You know, like they find something that's wrong and they're really angry about it, and then whatever, it moves on. But one of the things I really liked about the conversation that you guys had was you were very practical about these things, right? You talked about prize money and things like that. Of if you want to change it, somebody's got to do something about it, right? You can't just sort of be indignant about it and expect that it changes on its own. So there's some really interesting things that come out of that. What's the one thing that you think people should take away from this, or thing that you learned? You know, we talked about this is about your process. So what did you learn from your conversation with Katerina that you'll use going forward?
Yeah, I think that I've always looked up to Katerina. She's always been a very powerful figure in the cyclocross community. I've shared this story a couple times, but I remember being a young Cub junior. We were at the Mercer Cup USGP, and it was my mom's birthday that weekend. And we went around and we were able to get all of the pros at that time to sign a birthday card. And Katerina was one of them. And I thought that was so cool how I think that's a reflection of cycling in general, but also especially cyclocross, how accessible athletes are to fans and spectators. I always found that to be very cool, and how she's always taken that responsibility. We do have a responsibility to make time for people who are coming into the sport, to inspire people, because that's ultimately what sport is. And I think Katerina is one of those people who takes that responsibility to another level, where she does have a representative role within the sport. She was, I believe, the president of the Athletes Commission at the UCI. She's on the Cyclocross Commission now. She won her recent election where she's representing alongside Steve Chanel of France. And we always like to think of Katerina as an American, but technically Czech, from communist Czechoslovakia, now Czech Republic. But we had some really interesting conversations, and to be blunt about it, the discrepancies between men's and women's sport in cyclocross. And we were able to talk about the difference between cyclocross and road, and her perspective was very simple. I think if you see something that's going on that's wrong, you got to stand up and say something or do something about it. You have some sort of obligation to do that. And it is very easy to complain on the internet, and I mean, your voice can be heard by many people. But she also ran for election, won the election, and was more often than not the only woman at the table sometimes having these discussions with the UCI. And it took someone like her to say, this is something that's wrong, we need to change it, and have those constructive conversations to influence change. So that Katerina has always been a very level-headed, methodical person. And I think it was really cool to kind of sit down and have those conversations with her and just hear her process, and why she felt this calling for her to have this representative role. But also, like, the root of it is her love for the sport and her love for seeing new people come into the sport and succeeding and being able to provide opportunities for young athletes. I believe it was our last show with Jeff Proctor. It was a Greek proverb that was, I don't want to botch this up, but I believe it went along the lines of a successful or a thriving society functions in a way that they plant trees knowing that they will produce shade they will never lie in. Something to that effect. So she is.
Yeah, he was talking about that as being a sort of a mantra for teachers, right? You plant shade that you'll never lie in, because you never see the results of your work, or you never get the benefit of your work, right?
Right. And perhaps Katerina is seeing the benefits very later in her career, but you look at another woman like Helen Wyman, who's done more to advance women's cyclocross than just about anyone else. She'll never lie in that shade of the prize money or the opportunities that young junior women are getting, but she's helping influence these opportunities and change, which is really cool to see.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a great connection between those two conversations for sure. So I guess, man, let's jump into it, huh?
Yeah, let's jump into it. Before we dive into this conversation, a couple of reminders. We're going to touch a little bit briefly on the new New York Curtis Cyclocross Pilsner. Look out for it at the upcoming races right now in New York, but we're working on getting it across state lines. If you're coming to Rochester, definitely recommend you coming out at least to get a can. We're on the second batch now, right? The first batch already sold out.
Yeah, I think the second batch he's making, like right now, this week, I believe was the date that Chad, the brewmaster, gave me last time we talked about it. I took some cans to a small race in Buffalo. They were a big hit. And we gave them away from podium prizes, and then we'll have some more at Rochester in a couple more weeks. So a perfect hand up beer right there for the non-elite fields. I'm sure you're not taking any hand ups during your race, are you, Curtis?
Oh, no. Not for me. But it'll be really nice to see the community enjoying that. And one last note before we move on, we want to continue to grow the show, get the word out, and hopefully get some sponsors involved with the show. So if you haven't done so already, please subscribe, give us a rating, leave a comment, share wherever you listen to podcasts. All of those things help us take the show to the next level. So really appreciate your support. And also, if you have any feedback or things you'd like to hear us talk about or people you'd like us to talk to, send us your feedback. You can send me an email inthered@curtisjwett.com. Contact me through my contact page on my website or reach out to our social media. So, Tony, that's all I have for right now. Let's get into it.
Man. Katerina, Nash, and then Roanoke, and then we'll talk again next week.
All right. It's the GOAT. All right, Katerina Nash, welcome in the red. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. What's behind the name? I think I can picture it because we're talking about cyclocross, but what's behind the name of your podcast?
Yeah, in the red with Curtis White. So it's kind of a play on the colors, but just kind of in the red. It's that intensity, that race feeling that just everyone loves about cyclocross. Really, any sport. Just sport and athletics in general, but that intensity, that drive. And speaking of multiple sports, we're kind of jumping the gun a little bit, but I'd love to talk about your history in not just cyclocross and cycling, but sport in general. Your story is pretty cool. I think I always grew up knowing you as the cyclocross superstar. You've been an iconic figure in the North American and international cyclocross scene for as long as I can remember. But you just have so much experience in athletics in general. Like, how did you, what's your journey through sport?
Yeah, overall, I think I dare to say I've spent a lot of time in the red zone, if that's what we're speaking about today. I'm still a huge fan of those like high intensity efforts, such as cyclocross. I came from cross-country skiing background, which is definitely, like full on, using every muscle, everything to get you to the finish. So that was kind of my big first sport before I switched to cycling. And I didn't get into cyclocross until pretty late, late 20s. And I've been enjoying it ever since and can't seem to like get away from it. There's so much good cyclocross, and I may not be like full-time World Cup anymore, but I just did my first cross race on Wednesday in San Francisco, and I just love that effort. I love going around in a circle and just kind of chopping people off and getting chopped and all of it.
That's exciting. Cross is here finally. I just did my first race this past weekend, and we're doing another one this weekend. I'm actually tomorrow. The promoters from Gloucester. You've raced Gloucester before, right?
Yeah, I think actually Gloucester was my very first cyclocross race ever.
Was it really?
It was, yeah.
That's awesome. That has to be one of my most it's one of the most iconic courses and races in North America. It's a shame that it's not happening anymore, but the promoters are running the Grand Prix Beverly, which is where I live right now, Beverly, Massachusetts. And it's on the beach again, right on this park, right on the beach. It runs onto the sand. It's a cool little park. So it has a very Gloucester-esque vibe to it. We're only a couple towns away from Gloucester still, but
pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cool local feeling, and it's nice to get back in touch with your local cycling scene. Like you're seeing the familiar faces, especially after the last year and a half. Seeing the familiar faces, getting back in the red again, doing
Yeah.
those all-out efforts, getting chopped, chopping yourself, and then it's so much fun. And just the kind of the family environment that a cyclocross race has. Like you go to other disciplines of cycling, like it's great, but it's not quite the same as a cyclocross race.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can kind of relate to it, especially this summer, because my shortest race this summer was 6 hours. So everything I've done, it's been 6 to 8 hours. And it is not the same effort. It is such different mindset. And yeah, like I entered this outlaw San Francisco, all the men are dressed up in dresses, actually, cyclocross race on Wednesday night. And it was so fun. It was just so fun to ride my bike again and not have to worry about like, I got 7 more hours to go here, And so it really brought me back to that kind of cyclocross community and spirit and effort that I really missed. I really missed, last time I raced was a world championship in Switzerland, beginning of 2020 before the pandemic hit.
Right before they shut
And
down.
so it's been a long time coming. I worry about my speed taking almost 2 years off. But I'm just pretty excited it's here, and plan to do a few cross races. So
That's great. So were you doing mostly gravel this summer or like the endurance mountain biking?
yeah, both of those, a little bit of gravel, a little bit of mountain biking. A lot of the traditional events that I might do typically either didn't return or got postponed later into the fall. So there's a bit of a overlap. So yeah, I did like well, really Belgian waffle ride and Leadville and Telluride 100. So a whole bunch of like mountain bike and gravel
Mhm.
stuff. So
Are those, would you say, between an endurance mountain bike and gravel, were those like relatively similar efforts, like from a physiological standpoint?
yeah, for sure. I mean, I wouldn't say that Leadville is really a mountain bike race. To me, mountain bike race, you need some skills. So it's like I love the hard mountain bike event. That's where you like ride full suspension bike and technique matters. Leadville is really just the fitness. That race is just focused on fitness and high altitude, and it's so funny because I was going into Belgian waffle ride, which is probably 70% on the road, with the idea, well, this is gonna be a long day on the bike. It's like 135 miles and lots of roads. So I was like, this is a road race, and then the dirt in that race was so fun because first of all, I rode my road bike with 28cc tires on, and we kind of got into the first segment around a lot of men, and now I was back at the cyclocross race, looking for passes, distancing myself from my competition, using the chaos
Were
to
there any run-ups?
to navigate the field. Well, a lot of people got off for this little rock roll, but I rode it
Mhm.
because I had a chance to be there a couple days earlier. So I
The
checked
course pre-ride is important.
I checked it out. So anyway, so that like turned out to be the funnest part for me in that gravel road race. And then other people entered that with like, that was terrifying. Like that was scary, like because there's honestly people everywhere and most people didn't know how to ride the dirt. So yeah, so that was fun. And then, you go to mountain bike race like Leadville and it's just all fitness and pacing and eating and doing all the right things. So I don't know. I think everything over that like 6 hours mark, it's really not that much. You don't go into the red zone like we talk about here. You really just have to put all the bits and pieces together to not overdo it early on and have energy throughout the day. And that's something I've been learning. I definitely I came from that high intensity of cross country skiing and short track and cyclocross and really even the modern mountain biking, when we're talking Olympic mountain biking, that we're talking an hour and a half, versus the 2.5, 2 hours I
Mhm.
started with. So like all those really fit my style, my skill set, my, training. But it's been interesting to try to improve in the long distance and tackle that and have that new challenge all over again, because once you figure out a discipline, and you're probably at that point, like in cyclocross, like you improving and you're learning, but the curve is pretty small. You've done it for so long. And and so all you do is just working on that fitness and technique, right? But like there's not much that will surprise you going into the season now. Well, once you like step out of it and go enter like the 100-mile gravel scene, it's a whole new game. Now you have to figure out how to eat, when to eat, what to eat, when not to overdo it, and all those things. So yeah, it's been good learning experience. But I love that effort where you just go out and just go with it and see if it works out or not, because you don't have that choice in cyclocross to be like, I'm just gonna ease into this one. I'm just gonna take it easy for first 10 minutes, right? Like you don't have that choice. You'll never see the leaders. So you
Right.
just you go all out and hope for the best. So
Yeah, totally. It has been pretty unique. So I kind of dove into some of the gravel races. I was training for Unbound earlier this year and a couple other gravel events. Um, and man, that was a wake up call. I mean, just like even the training aspect, like training for a long
yeah.
gravel event, how to survive it, and even experimenting with, to your point, the nutrition side. What do I eat? What am I comfortable with? How often do I eat?
Hmm.
Um, what do I pack? What is, bringing a mechanic to Unbound? Like you need to be in and out of the pit zones very quickly.
Yep.
That, that
Yep.
that's probably the most intense part of the race, in and out of the pit zones, and having to coordinate that with a mechanic, or just there's all these new pieces. When you're
Yes.
at the top
Yes.
of cyclocross, to your point, you're only making 0.5% here, 1/4% there.
Hmm.
But starting a completely new discipline or trying something new for the first time, you're completely in the deep end,
Yeah.
and you have
Yeah.
all it just there's so much to learn, and that's kind of the cool part of that. So I mean, kind of where I want to go with this conversation is that you haven't always been a cyclist. What was your introduction to sport? You're originally from Czech Republic, or Czechoslovakia formerly, I guess.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm old enough to to say that I was born in Czechoslovakia, and then right around the time that I was, really getting into sports, the curtain came down, and it could have been any better timing for me, because I grew up very close to the Alps. So the Austrian Alps, the German Alps, Italy not that far away. And so suddenly all my ski training was just, we were heading to these big mountains, and kind of exploring the world for the first time ever. So that was pretty neat. But to back off even more, so I grew up pretty small town, and it was sort of like traditional, like you could do any kind of sport. That was the great thing about the communist era, so to speak. It was very easy to join any club. The club would typically have all kinds of equipment, so nobody had to show up with a bike or skis or whatnot, a guitar, or whatever you choose to do. You had access to the equipment, so the entryway was super easy. And so I started with gymnastics, and that was super fun, but like it was indoors, and I've never been an indoor person. So I pretty quickly changed to a ski team and did some track and field, and just a little bit of everything. But the bike was always, the skiers, we always rode bikes, and we rode gravel back in the 80s, and
Back
then
before it was gravel.
yeah, and then mountain bikes came around, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And then so I got into mountain biking probably mid 90s, and since then it's been kind of like it was like my summer. How kids in high school, they go get summer job, for me, it was like, I can go to mountain bike races. And in the 90s, there's a lot of money, even in Czech Republic. And
Really?
I could go and like win a couple of races and be a bike racer for the summer. And like, I was like making good money, and it was really fun. And it was very different than what I was focusing on, which was cross country skiing. Cross country skiing was at that point very structured, very focused, high intensity, just kind of heading towards the, national team path and the Olympics and all of that. So biking was always like my fun summer escape.
That was the off season.
That was my off season. But yeah, for some reason, I just always felt good on the bike, and I was good at on the road bike, but the mountain biking just really felt closer to, I think, the skiing effort with your like VO2 max up the hill, but that you got to keep it together for the downhill. So mountain biking was similar to that,
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, fast forward, I end up accepting a skiing scholarship, and that's how I ended up in the United States. And I kept my summer job with the team back home based out of Prague, and would finish semester, go back to Czech and race. And then eventually I was like, I should probably look for a team in the United States. And that's when I signed with Luna, which is now Cliff Bar. We've been supported by Cliff Bar for last 20 seasons.
Wow.
And I've been part of that the whole time. And yeah, we're actually just closing on that chapter this year. So it's yeah, I'm like entering that like nostalgic period now, because it's really, really coming to the end, and it's been quite incredible, and pretty thankful for Cliff Bar's support of the team for all these years.
Mm-hmm. It's really incredible. I mean, growing up as a young athlete, as a Cub Junior, and looking up and seeing you and Georgia Gould at the USGPs, or I remember being a young kid, and it was my mother's birthday one weekend at the Mercer Cup USGP, and we got a birthday card, and we went to all the pros. You, Georgia Gould, Lynn Bissett, Ryan Chabone, Tim Johnson, Powers. Everyone signed the card, and that's kind of the cool part about cycling in general, is just the athletes are so easily, like, we're just accessible to the fans. But just as a fan, as someone who's just, I love cyclocross, and I love the athletes, and just the scene, the vibe. Cliff Bar has played a massive role in not just cyclocross, but the sport in general. I remember being, through my 15, 16 years, I was on the Cliff Bar development cyclocross team based out of Boulder, Colorado. Ben Turner ran that program.
Mm-hmm.
And that was so cool, because it was like the Brady Capias's, Danny Summerhills, Alex Howes was on the team, Mitch Hoke. We always kind of had, Cliff Bar always had a presence in one form or another, whether it was through the Luna program, into the Cliff Bar program, or in development, or sponsoring events. It was always cool to see a big name like that in the sport, and supporting programs.
Yeah, for sure.
And athletes
Cliff Bar was born on the bike, and they will always stay on the bike. And I think most of us can, thank the actual bar for getting us home on so many occasions when you head out on the big adventure and things don't turn out quite as planned. And you can like be like, oh my God, that Cliff Bar, if I didn't have that Cliff Bar,
I don't
where would I be?
I don't know why this is an unpopular opinion, but my favorite Cliff Bar always was the carrot cake flavor.
Oh yeah, I like that one. It was my favorite, but it was good. I liked it.
I haven't met anyone who said it was their favorite. There are a lot of people that said, why would you eat a carrot cake Cliff Bar? Just go eat a piece of carrot cake, which I understand that. But
yeah. I think the key to Cliff Bars, and I'm super guilty of that, because I always been fortunate to grab a few boxes at the warehouse and then keep it for way too long. And the few times that I got hands on a fresh Cliff Bar, there's a big difference there. So it's, I think like you probably had that carrot cake when it was like super fresh and soft and delicious, and that other person probably had the older bar that was sitting somewhere too long, and they're like, this doesn't sound that good, you know. So I highly recommend eating your Cliff Bars. If you buy big box, eat them sooner than later, because they're really, really good when they're fresh.
Most things are better fresh.
Exactly. That old carrot cake, that's not good either. The real carrot cake, frosting all green.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I just wanted to jump back to kind of what you mentioned about the community. And this is like, you know, especially this summer, I mean, like watching your sister Emma, like getting a medal at the Olympics. Like I, you know, I've had these like moments throughout my career when I just like, I meet these little kids, or your brother Harrison, you know, and yourself included when you were tiny or smaller than me. But like, I just watched this generation after generation just kind of, you know, pick it up from cyclocross and take it to all these great places. And I was so proud of Emma and just so stoked for her. And yeah, it's just cool. It's like, I don't know, I think you said like, it's about time I tell everybody I'm Emma's brother, you know, and I was just like, oh my God, I'm Emma's friend. Or I should be like, I know Emma, you know. So it's really cool to see where all the little cyclocross kids are heading to and what they're doing with the sport. And in general, I mean, like if we look at all the cyclocross racers this summer, it's like everybody's kicking ass, you know, those that are like mountain biking, road riding, and all of that. So it's neat to see that somewhat smaller disciplines have brought so much talent into cycling and all the levels of cycling there are. So
Absolutely. And you can look at it from the elite level too, like how many medals for cycling were won by former cyclocross athletes themselves. I mean, I think cyclocross kind of, it's this ubiquitous discipline where you have to be the complete athlete. You need to do the running, the body circuit training. You need to handle your bike well. Tactically, you need to be sharp. If you focus too much on the track or too much on mountain bike or too much on the road, you become, it's your skills are very niche. Niche. I can never get that one
you're
right.
asking somebody whose first language is not English. That wouldn't be much help.
Wrong person
here,
to ask. Anyway,
person.
I'm sure I'm gonna get corrected on Twitter somewhere here, but it's cyclocross kind of, it lends itself to training weaknesses almost. You to improve, you always need to be training your weaknesses. And
I really hope that like people continue to, you know, do cyclocross versus like training indoors on the trainer, because it's easier, you know. Like I think it's so crucial. Like for me, like yes, I live in California and I train mostly in nice weather, but I have 2 decades of racing and training in crappy weather, so I can still show up in Belgium tomorrow and ride the muddiest course and be fine, because I've developed that skill set, and I really like it for racing. I may not like prefer it for training anymore. You know?
Well, Czech riders always have this reputation of being able to show up and perform when the conditions are at their absolute worst. Like when it's snowy and icy, like Hartford Nationals a few years ago, I feel like that would be a Czech rider's dream. I think
I don't know. I was the same. Like a lot of the races that I, you know, won or was really successful at, they were definitely like the tough one, the ones that people are like, they were already broken mentally before lining up, and I would be like, yes, bring it on. You know? So when it's like perfect, like kind of dry and fast, and then I'm like, oh gosh, this is not gonna be good.
Well, then it's easy for everyone, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Except me.
But yeah, so it's, I mean, you've played a very influential role in cyclocross, domestically and internationally. You've competed at the highest level, winning World Cups, coming close to the World Championships a few times in multiple disciplines, and more recently, you've taken on more of a representative role with the sport. You're now on your second term as an athlete representative on the cyclocross commission with the UCI.
Yeah, so technically we haven't started the second term yet. We have been elected in January, but the way the athletes commission works, all the cycling disciplines are electing their representative throughout this year, and cyclocross being the first world championship, we were the first one to get elected, and then the commission is coming together now with mountain bike worlds and the road worlds coming up and track and so on. So yeah, we'll technically meet first time in sometimes November, December as the new athletes commission. But yes, I've been part of the cyclocross commission as well, and we've had definitely meetings. And then I also, being a president of the athletes commission, I've been part of the management commission, which is technically the board of the UCI. So I've been part of all those meetings, and that role also runs through the end of the year. So yeah, I've been definitely keeping a lot more busy than I pictured when I first signed up to run as a cyclocross representative. But it's been great for me because even though I'm still a very active racer, I don't want to say my best days are behind, but my most competitive or busiest, kind of racing career is behind, and I finally have time to do a little bit more extra, So, for example, like a lot of the management committee meetings, it's at the cyclocross world championship. So for the last few years, I would sit in the meetings 2 days before the race instead of pre-riding or resting or something. But that's where I've been with my career, I've had that time to kind of focus just on the racing, but now I just combine those two, and it's been rewarding. It's been good learning curve. And I think the reason why I'm still racing is also because of these roles. I want to stay relevant. I want to be on the ground, and I want to be talking to the athletes and learning what's needed, what's not, because I don't represent my views. I represent all of us. And so yeah, combining kind of part-time job with racing job and all of that, but it's good. It's a good mix right now.
What made you want to pursue, or what made you want to take on this more representative role to represent athletes in the sport of cyclocross?
I felt like I needed to give back. I've had definitely, thanks to Cliff Bar, I had a super successful career, and I was fortunate enough to have cycling as my career for a good chunk of time. And I've taught a lot of clinics. I've done, a lot of riding with kids. I've done a lot of things, but I've never really, racing was just my focus for so long. That was the main thing. And I would just jump here and there and ride with kids, or put on a clinic for women, or, all kinds of little things. And I still do that. But apart from that racing, for the longest time, I didn't really, from college to late 30s, I didn't do anything else. And it was just sounded like a good way to get involved. And just like Georgia influenced my entry into cyclocross by joining Luna back in the day, I had a chance to watch her to represent on the mountain bike commission, and just chatting with her about things she was able to do. Anyway, it just sounded like a good timing for me to stay involved in the sport without having really an idea what it was, what I was signing myself for. and I kind of added to my roles as the time went on. And, by becoming a president of the Athletes Commission, it really put me on the board of the UCI. And that's including the whole COVID year and many other meetings that needed to take place. It's not like a full-time job. I'm not like a employee of UCI, but I've enjoy sharing my experience. I've enjoyed being that athlete in the room. I've enjoyed being sometimes the only woman in the room with perspective on women cycling and fighting for things that need to be, improved and taken care of. So I don't know. The more I get into it, the more I enjoyed it, and yeah, I'm thankful for the opportunity. And um, yeah, it's been good, and I think it's been good for off-road athletes to have somebody who's coming from the off-road
Mhm.
uh, to the management committee for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I think, I mean, going through this past COVID year, or we're watching uh, the development or the increased involvement of junior women's categories in cyclocross. I mean, it just, the sport is growing, and we're trying to get as many people involved in this as possible. And you've certainly been a role model, a mentor to many young athletes. And you look at other women like Helen Wyman, who's done a lot to really bring in and create new opportunities for young women to get them involved in cyclocross. And it's just, it's super cool to see and understand your, like, the inside point of view, like from the
Yeah.
representative, what's going on the ground level. Like, like
Yeah.
I'd love to be a fly on the wall to hear what these discussions are like. And I know that's, I'm fascinated because it's so easy to kind of just expect change to come about like with a snap of a finger, and just,
Yeah,
well,
no,
oh, of course, like
it's
this is the right thing to do. Why isn't this happening right now?
why
Like,
isn't happening overnight? And and when you mentioned some of these changes, I mean, uh, you know, essentially when I first started going to Europe, we were getting paid 1/10 of what the men were making, right? And yes, I've had a long career, but it's still one person's career. And we went from 1/10 to now equal pay and a lot more opportunities for the young riders. And it was us, it was a group of athletes in the US that said, like, this is not fair. And Georgia put together a petition, and we started, getting signatures. And that led to a meeting at UCI, and UCI say, well, yeah, that's not right. Let's change it. It wasn't like they were there fighting it. They were just like, well, I guess nobody brought it up before, so let's change it. And now it's where we're at. But the change, it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen with one person, but we've been so fortunate to have all these women out there fighting, uh, you know, not really for themselves, because a lot of them now are retired. They didn't get the benefit. Helen didn't get the benefit of equal pay, but she enjoys the fact that more young women can enter the sport and they can turn it into their career, and it's a possibility for them. And I think sharing that message is the most important thing. It's just like, it's still going to take that tough, highly motivated individual to be successful at the end of the day, to be professional cyclocross racer. And it's not for everybody, but at least if that individual sticks with that and wants to do it, they should have the same opportunity as the road racer or as the mountain bike racer and as all the other athletes out there in the world that are making decent living. And that's what I get excited about. That, first of all, the prize money is much better than it used to be, and there are teams that are supporting women. And I've seen a lot of good coverage and a lot of great racing. So anyway, I mean, you on the team, that are you the last standing man with a whole bunch of ladies, or?
I am, yes. I'm the oddball out. But I mean, what you're saying is a very interesting point. And I believe it was Lucinda Brand who, she hasn't taken a step back from Truck Factory on the road, or Truck Segafredo, her World Tour team on the road, but she's taking up more of a role with her cyclocross team. And I believe there were some people in the press that were kind of criticizing this, because road racing is the gold standard. Road racing is where it's at. And I believe it was Sven to kind of come back and say there are far more opportunities for women to make a living in cyclocross now than the road. mean, if you look at the prize list for the men's Tour of Flanders versus the women's, the disparity it's huge. But
Oh,
then
I
if you,
know. I jumped into Tour of California a few years ago because it went around Lake Tahoe, and I was like, I don't want to miss out on this great opportunity to ride around Lake Tahoe without cars. And I think I got 12 and 13, and they were gonna like give me $20 or 40. I'm like,
again, you'd make more at a UCIC
what
too.
is happening here? And that's the crazy thing, is just like the fact that so many of us, like, like maybe 10 years ago, you didn't know that the women were making 1/10 of you were making, right? And just like, I mean, I know now what all these different disciplines are making, and the great thing about all the new disciplines coming into UCI, like BMX freestyle, they're all starting equal. There's no discussion where the men or the women are going to be. They're all starting equal, right? So it's like it is the road racing that's been around for a long time. It's not mountain biking. Mountain biking's been equal as far as prize money for a long, long time. So it comes down to the athletes and kind of like raising awareness and fighting for it. But the most important thing is, like, you have to have a good product. You have to have a good competitive field, and cyclocross is showing that we deserve the same attention, and it's here, and it's creating more opportunities, and it's creating awesome competition. And I don't know, it's just been fun to see. But I'm glad that people are starting to understand that it's just like doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen just because you say so. It's like there's there's a lot of work to do to get that equal prize money. Because somebody has to pay it. Somebody has to put up the money, and it's not fair to take it from the men either. That is not solution. So it's just it's been, I think, decent progression on the cyclocross side, and I'm pretty stoked that we have all these new women's categories when they're ready for it, versus like having two girls riding around, right? So like we waited long enough, we build up the development teams, and I think now we're just ready for all of it. And I'm pretty excited that the junior women will finally get to race their World Cup this year, because that whole last year was kind of a mess for
I know.
all kinds of things. So yeah, I think we're heading into pretty exciting season, and it's I don't know, I'm pretty stoked to watch it all.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of really exciting things to look forward to. There's a lot of opportunities, and kind of where I want to go with the next segue into this conversation is the rebounding of the North American cyclocross scene and these new opportunities we have. We have 3 World Cups on U.S. soil. The World Championships are coming to Fayetteville, and we now have a national series popped up, the U.S. Cyclocross Series. And with this new deal that the U.S. Cyclocross Series is signed with GCN, it's a multi-year broadcasting deal to showcase American racing live globally. Like, I mean, how cool is that? There really hasn't been an opportunity like this for American cyclocross ever. I mean, we had the Supercross days, the USGPs. Everyone likes to talk about those series as the glory days of US cyclocross, but we need to be more forward thinking and think about, okay, those days are behind us. They were great, but what do we do to create something new? How do we showcase this incredible product that we have? And North American cyclocross doesn't need to hold itself to the European model. I think that the World Cups, the Super Prestiges, the X2O Bod Commerce Trophy, they all have very unique product. And if you look, they're all slightly different from each other. But I mean, what an incredible opportunity for the North American cyclocross scene. I from your perspective, as someone who's seen US cyclocross at its peak during the USGP days, and been at the pinnacle of sport and involved with these discussions with the UCI and understanding the broadcasting and the promotion and branding of the sport, what are what are some things that you'd like to see happen in North America to help grow this new cyclocross series, or just to help grow our scene in North America? I know that
Yeah.
that's a very loaded question.
It's loaded, yeah,
Yeah.
but I think like one of the most important points that you touched on is like, I don't think North America needs to copy Europe, you know, like it's still cyclocross, it's still the same discipline, but the cool thing about uh you know, this continent is like every state is different, has different dirt, has different parks, has different conditions, different environment. Like you can't produce that Belgium sand or, you know, mud, like, but you have all these other elements. Like we've seen anything from racing on grass in Las Vegas to, you know, awesome races on the East Coast to maybe Boulder, Reno, you know, everything is a little bit different, but it's like I think that's what has made me much better cyclist, because I've been fortunate to ride on all kinds of different surfaces, and it's not always the same venue over and over, you know, every year. And I do like, coming from skiing, I definitely appreciate that tradition, you know, like you have these, uh, you know, downhill ski events that have been there for 30 years and they come back every year. And it's a great tradition and people come and there's a lot of respect with that. And, you know, if you can win the Hahnenkamm, you're going to be the king forever, you know. So I love that piece, but cyclocross in America is, you know, we have some our pockets, but maybe it's not possibility to have that one Namur, that one Coxside every year, you know, because the country's too big and just can't build it. So I think it's pretty cool that it's getting built more around those regions. I mean, you guys obviously are in a good place in New England with a lot of cool events and some UCI racing coming back. Unfortunately, the West Coast is choosing more the grassroots approach and, you know, more little like local series where they don't, you know, necessarily need the UCI status. And that's been both hard for me and good, because I love the just local series and just, you know, I don't even sign up ahead. I just like, oh, I feel like racing in Sacramento today. Okay, I'll go, you know, because it's such fun approach to racing, you know. So I don't know. Ultimately, I probably would like to see a little bit more disparity between like the coast and the Midwest and have a little bit of UCI racing everywhere for the athletes to have an opportunity, because as you know, the traveling back and forth in this country is just
It's
really
massive.
it's really hard. And then, you know, and that's like us professional athletes that have, you know, support from our sponsors. And so then, you know, I obviously worry about the young athletes that like, how are they going to get across the country on Friday and be back in school by Monday and all those little bits and pieces. So I think, yeah, you have to build your own thing and pick those national championships and those few weekends to, you know, to make it more competitive and have everybody come together, because that's also crucial. That was the piece about USGPs. There was, we all came together for those major weekends and the competition was so high. It was so good. And it, you know, it prepared me for whatever was next, because it was, you know, it was, once again, it was just this like melting pot of road racers coming in and mountain bikers coming in and the pure cyclocross athletes. And it was just, everybody came in with a little bit of a different skill set. And it was just the best environment to learn and improve. And so, yeah, so that's always good. And, you know, any coverage, it's crucial, because people are still learning about cyclocross. People are still like, what is it? You know, and you try to describe what it is, but it's very hard. You know, like, sometimes you run and sometimes you ride and it's on the dirt, but it's could be on the pavement, and it's, you know, and it's just like people don't get it. So if they can see it on TV, and obviously it's very entertaining sport, because it's easy to follow. it sticks together. It's exciting. It's very dynamic. So yeah, the coverage is exciting, but the future of the sport, the biggest piece is probably what are you guys doing with the kids? The development, the grassroots, the training camps, getting that young generation together and training and having you as a coach and mentor. And that's really what will, make US cyclocross better, because if these kids can learn from the athletes that have been to Europe, traveled to Europe, raced in Europe, and they can learn that rather than like go to Europe, be like, wow, what do I do now? They're gonna be much more successful, or have the skill set to be successful over there. And we've seen a lot of great North Americans be successful in Europe, and I know it's always an option. You just need the right steps, and the infrastructure is hard for sure. But yeah, don't copy Europe, build your own thing and just
Mm-hmm.
do your own thing.
Yeah, it seems like one thing that the U.S. scene needs to, and I want to be careful because I'm not trying to knock any local scenes. I know the New England scenes. Growing up as a young junior athlete, it was so easy to know where the next races were. I was connected to my local club. We had weekly training sessions. I know Boulder does a phenomenal job, the Pacific Northwest, the Ohio Valley. There's all these pockets all throughout the country, but it's I mean, to your point, US cyclocross can be its own thing, but also it's not like people are remounting totally different in Europe, or their dismounts are totally different, or it's just the technical side of it isn't totally different. We still have to learn similar techniques. Europeans aren't born stronger than us, but it's how do we cultivate these environments in the US? And it seems like what we're still trying to figure out in the US is how do we kind of cultivate the right development pipeline for cyclocross? And it is difficult with the US being so big. We can't get the kids from Oregon or Washington together with the kids from New York or Boston any weekend.
Yeah.
So to your point, it really takes people on the ground organizing local training sessions, getting people involved, taking the time to talk to a young boy or girl, saying, "Hey, look, this is how you get rid of your stutter step on a remount," or this is why you descend a certain way, or this is how you corner. And there's all these little moments that, and it also, a part of the responsibility is on the riders that are able to compete at a high level and are able to make a living, to kind of show face at some of these community events, and to say, hey, look, you can make it far in this sport to the point where you can potentially make a living or compete at a World Cup or a World Championship level. That is possible if you stick to it. There's a ton of things in life that you can learn from sport. And whether you stick with cycling or not, the lessons that you take on are huge. So, and it's also the communication between local cycling scenes and a USA Cycling to say, hey, we have this phenomenal young junior, strong as a bull, but can't figure out how to dismount cleanly. Where do they need to go to kind of cultivate these skills? And I was recently at Jeff Proctor's camp, this Eurocross Academy, Vermont Cross Camp. And we had, I believe it was 15 young men, 15 young women staying in dorms in Vermont. And we had male coaches, female coaches, all high-level athletes able to work with these young athletes. And that was huge. And it's so difficult for, if you're a 16 or 17-year-old young cyclocross racer in this country, to be training with a dozen other racers that are your age. Most of the times you're racing or training with people that are older than you, or it's
for sure. Yeah.
And that's the thing that makes it stick. If you go to the Netherlands or Belgium, and it's not, again, they're not born stronger. They're not better at remounting or dismounting than us. They can't run faster, but it's the community aspect.
Yeah. And I think in sports, I mean, it's such a big piece, right? Like, you're not just looking to be this champion, you're looking for community, you're looking for friends. And, a lot of people like either give up on the sport too early because they didn't find their group, or they stick with it much longer because they found the group. They know they may not be competitive, but they love their group and they want to ride and train with them all the time. And so that's, that is the crucial piece. Like, to me, cycling is, it's such a social part of my life.
Mhm.
Yes, I go do my intense workout or whatever, but if I don't have those group rides or those social rides, like, I don't know if I would enjoy my bike as much as I do. And I think for people entering the sport, especially the younger generation, the kids, the teenagers, like, if they can find good friends, wear lycra and ride around on bicycle and feel good about themselves, no matter what the results are, that's going to keep them in the sport. And keep them happy. And I think anybody who rides dirt, like, how do you not enjoy riding dirt? I'm sure there's some cycling disciplines that are more intense than others, but like for me, like, even if I have to go do something hard, as long as it's riding dirt, it just feels like fun, no
Mhm.
matter what. So,
Totally.
and the racing was kind of the same. And I know there's all these other means to get fit, and you gotta put in those miles on the road bike and all of that. But like, just to go ride your bike, especially drop bar bike on the dirt, like, I just feel like a kid again. Like, am I supposed to be going this fast on this bicycle down this hill? So, um, anyway, it's about that balance of finding out, like, you know, yes, you have to be serious to be good. Yes, you have to do your training, but you kind of have to keep it in perspective and keep it fun.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I think I started to enjoy cold, rainy 4-hour rides a lot more when I had company instead of doing it
Yeah,
alone.
for sure.
But it's, I mean, also, I mean, the essence of a cyclocross skills training session, to be a better athlete, you need to be with people that are at least as good as you, if not better. So you need to keep putting
Yeah.
yourself in uncomfortable situations, and it just train in a light, uh, just a relaxed way. Because if you're able to slide out or crash and laugh it off in a training session, you're gonna. It's just it's so much easier to walk away from it, have a good night's
Mm,
sleep, and come back stronger the next day instead of just being frustrated or kicking
for
yourself for not
sure.
getting the technique right, or just it just having that environment is so critical for young athletes.
Yeah, for
So
sure. And like, for me, I never really had, like, I got into cyclocross late. I watched it on TV growing up, and, and I never really had a big, strong community where I live, especially cyclocross, because this is a ski town, it's a ski area. So people were already moving on to skiing by the time I was still riding around in a circle. But uh, I also think, like, all the bikes, they help you. You don't have to just do that one thing over and over. And like, for me, like, pushing my skill set on the mountain bike, uh, still trying to do some like cross practice even by myself, and then like racing, like, I think that's where I improve the most, is racing. Like, don't worry, like, always about like this result, or am I prepared, or am I in perfect shape to enter this race or that race. So just like, go race. Like, that's where you learn the most. And I'm, first of all, I'm still learning even now.
you
All
never
the
stop
time.
learning.
It never stops. Well, when it does, then you're done. You got to move on to something different. But it's, yeah, for me, it's just like, I like to learn in that race environment, because that's when you push yourself the hardest, and that's when you make the most mistakes and the worst decisions. But that, you take it into the next one, and that's good. So.
Mhm. Yeah. So going forward into the season, we're coming back from COVID. Um, the season or the U.S. cyclocross scene is rebounding. We have a lot to look forward to. Um, where can we see you this upcoming season, and what role do you see yourself playing going forward in the sport?
Well, so I'll definitely be out there at some of the few events. My plan right now, it's still a little bit evolving. There's a little bit of overlap with mountain biking and my team being mountain bike team. I need to sort of finish things off with the team. So uh, I am hoping to be at Trek in Fayetteville. I don't know. I don't know about Jingle Cross, so I might have to stay in Arkansas for the epic ride, and then I probably do something later in the year in Europe. But I don't have a set schedule right now. My goal for the year is to race enough and go to World Championship because it is in the U.S. and I did get my cyclocross start in the United States, and I feel like it's the right place to sort of complete the international racing for me. I will not be chasing the World Cup anymore or anything like that, but I really would like to show up for the US fans, for my longtime fans in the cyclocross community, and race at Fayetteville. So I need to come up with enough racing that sort of fits between, whatever's left with mountain biking and commitment with UCI and travel and all that, just to get enough points. So yeah, hoping to find a couple of races in Europe. And then, yeah, hopefully we'll see you in Fayetteville. And and when I'm not there, I'm definitely watching everything on the couch, glass of wine, thinking I could have been there in that lead group. Oh yeah, totally. No, I think last year, COVID year, really turned me into like a fan of cyclocross because
Mhm.
before I didn't spend as much time watching all the races because, like, I don't know about you, but like for me, if you're always racing it, like I didn't feel like watching whatever I raced, even if I did well. I was like, I was
Mhm.
there, lived it. I don't need to see it again. But last year, without any of racing, I loved watching everything on TV and learning about, my competition and all the newcomers and all the stuff you don't see when you're actually out racing. So yeah, I'm a super fan of cyclocross, and when I'm not playing the big league, I'm definitely at all the local stuff and all the Halloween cyclocross events and any of those where there's like costumes and adult beverages and riding bikes all together. That's like I don't ever want to miss on that. So
Right. Yeah. Well, I know, speaking for myself and probably most of your American fans, we all probably think of you as American already by this point because you've played such a big role with the U.S. cyclocross scene. And it's always kind of funny when the World Championships happen. It's like, wait, where's Katerina? She's in the team now. It's always kind of like a brief little reminder. I'm like, okay, all right, right, she's correct still. But yeah, it is nice getting back in touch with that reason why you fell in love with bikes in the first place. Kind of that it's when you're at the highest level of sport for so long, it's nice to kind of remind yourself of what you truly love about the sport and what that grassroots community is like.
for sure.
So
And we're so lucky to like have that in cycling, right? Like there's sports that there's like you're not gonna dress up and drink alcohol and go ski jumping. You're not. There's no grassroots ski jumping.
well, that would end very badly. 9 out of 10 doctors would not recommend that.
Or Formula One or whatnot. So we're so lucky that we can keep racing bikes until whenever, whatever, as long as we have fun and be part of this cool community. So, yeah. So that's that.
All right. Well, Katerina, you already have a massive following, but for those who don't follow you, where can they find you?
I am somewhat active on Instagram, not so much on Twitter, but both of those are Katka Nash, and that's KATKANASH. So yeah.
If you want pictures of, you have a couple dogs, right?
I do have a couple dogs. Yes.
Yeah, I know
Yes.
my girlfriend follows you, and I mean, she really couldn't care about any of the pictures of your bikes or you racing, but when
Yeah.
she takes
Yeah.
care of your dogs, it's a
I've
big
got
deal.
pretty diverse following, I think. And people were like, why your dogs don't have their own? I'm like, you crazy? I would lose a lot of followers. Like they're not here for me. So anyway, I like to keep it all under one thing and simple and yeah, I wanted to wish you good luck with your upcoming season. I'm so excited about what you guys been doing, and always been a big fan of what Stu has done with the North American cyclocross, and I can't wait to see, you guys kicking butts again this year.
All right, very good, Katerina. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you at the races, and thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. Bye.